Hello and welcome back. In today's videos we're gonna watch a sample of a Christian sister lady called Mary phoning in live in of the historicity of the crucifixion part of Hamza Imran and Ijaz. This is a third part, and this old pretty lady, very polite, phone in and I think made her point, but due to the fact that in these 10 minutes they throw the Muslim apologists throw out so many arguments. But before we even start, because I'm a Christian, I'd like Jesus to respond to them through the Holy Spirit. So we're gonna go to 1 Corinthians and we're gonna read a few verses to see if they apply to this case, which I think it does, and then we're gonna move up into the video and analyze some of the things were said there. But bear in mind that I'd like to read this first so we can see Jesus' point of view through the Holy Spirit, and maybe you'll see why Muslim apologists don't like Paul that much. So let's read. I'll read 17 first. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but preach the gospel, nor with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross be emptied of its power. So, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. So we're gonna see it is foolishness to those who are perishing. I hope Muslim brothers will take the time to read all Corinthians. But to those who are being saved, it is the power of God, for it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent, and I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since the wisdom of God, the world throughout its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased throughout the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demanded signs and Greek looked for wisdom, but we preach Jesus Christ crucified, a stumbling block for the Jews and foolishness for Gentiles. But those whom God has called, both Jewish and Greek, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God, for the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards, not many were influential, not many were noble birth, but God chose the foolish thing of this world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and despised things to nullify the things that are, so no one may boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Jesus Christ, whom has become for us wisdom from God, that is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore, as it is written, let no one boast in the Lord. So we'll see Jesus Christ, it's actually wisdom, and wisdom counts as our righteousness, holiness, and redemption, because that is Jesus, my friends. Now let's go into the video and watch some ignorance, foolishness, as God calls it, not me, and let's correct some of the things that Muslim apologists said without knowing.
I've been reading about it all day today. Yes, I know.
Okay, so my point is that in order to find him, to figure out a way, they interviewed Jesus and they determined that they needed to get rid of him in some way. It was Passover. They weren't going to commit their own sins to do away with Jesus. And so they had to find a different reason. The Romans crucified Jesus because he was a political threat. They were afraid of an uprising.
Who was more a political threat, Jesus or Barabbas?
Jesus was.
Barabbas was a rebel leader.
Jesus, where does it say that Barabbas was?
Noticed, he says Barabbas is the dangerous one when the Romans it's actually let him go. Yeah, so when Jews are put to choose between Jesus and Barabbas, they choose Barabbas, and he is set free. So if he was that dangerous, he would have been probably put to death right away. But let's continue.
A rebel leader.
Well, it doesn't have to say it in the New Testament, does it?
Does it say it there?
Or does it have to?
Well, of course, it says he was a thief.
No, it's just interpreted. Listen, Ijaz,
No. That's
I'll explain it to you. I'll explain it to you. The Romans don't crucify thieves.
You're throwing in lies. Why are you doing
I'll
that?
tell you why it's not a lie. Because the Romans didn't crucify thieves. They crucified
Of course
rebels.
they didn't, but they crucified
Rebels.
people who were leading large insurrections. Why on earth?
Rebels.
Why on earth did the Romans come after Jesus in the garden?
They didn't.
If I may answer here.
With an incredible number of soldiers.
They didn't. If you read it, it was guards from the temple. If you read it properly, it's guards from the temple.
Guys,
should we get Ijaz?
Yeah,
We have to give him that. They were guards from the temple.
Yeah.
Kind of off,
I know I was reading.
you're off topic there, but my point is that
What? I'm what?
you were off the topic there. But
I'm
my
on the topic. You said the Romans arrested him in the garden, and I said no. It was the Jewish priests and guards that arrested him in the garden.
But that's not the, you're interrupting me. The point I'm making is that it wasn't one soldier who came to arrest him.
It wasn't the Romans. It was
Why on earth would they come after one man with
they didn't.
section of the Roman army? Why?
They didn't. The Romans didn't come to the garden. The Jews did. That's why they took him to the house. Do you think the Jews had that power that they could take a prisoner of the Romans who was being arrested for insurrection? Come on.
The Jews didn't took him. The Romans let him go.
You need to go
Mary,
back
do you mind if we get Ijaz?
But my point is, I presented my.
Sorry, Mary, muted you for a bit. Ijaz, if you come on, Mary, you've been muted. I just want to hear what Ijaz has to say, and then I promise you, we'll get back to your point as well.
Indeed. So I just want to mention here, Mary, if you can hear me, in Mark chapter 15, verse 7. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the New Testament does mention him as a rebel. I have it here. I'm reading from the Greek New Testament here. So that would be Mark chapter 15, verse 7. Incidentally, I believe Tacitus actually mentions that the people were generally only sent to crucifixion for being rebels and committing high crimes. So he would not have been crucified for being a thief alone. So it has to be coupled in with at least one other charge, and it has to be rebellion. So I would disagree with you on that. Generally, though, I have to reject what the rabbis say, because if we presume that what they say is true, then Jesus, committed sorcery and he did idolatry, or at least he taught idolatry I do not think that Jesus, the Messiah of God, would teach sorcery or idolatry. So I would question this statement. If the presumption is we should accept whatever the Jews say about him, do we take that position in what they say about his mother, for example? So just generally, I think what Hamza was trying to say was that your point, as you made it,
Yes, Brother Mary, she is right. See, he's not arguing the death sentence that the Jews wanted to apply on Jesus, but what they believed about his power, which is irrelevant. The point they were supposed to discuss, it's if he was crucified or not what the Jews believed about Jesus and what we believed about Jesus. That's after the point.
Contradicts the historicity of the event itself. Mary, you please feel free to respond. I don't mind you laughing, it's okay with me. So please engage with what I've said, if
Yes.
possible.
Well, Ijaz, you are totally off the point. The point you guys came on and said we're going to talk about is not about what the Jews said about Mary, and it's not about what the Jews said about Jesus. What you said the topic was proof, historical proof, that Jesus was killed.
Crucified specifically, but Mary, then your point
and
becomes...
that is what the Mishnah says.
Okay, brilliant. But Mary,
Okay, any of that other stuff is off topic from what you said you're talking about.
Okay, so Mary, if just work with me, right? You're telling me that what the rabbis say is historically reliable, yes?
That's why she's quoting it.
Yes, and the other stuff about Mary and all that, that's...
So, no, but let's just pause there. So let's just pause there. So you're telling me it's historically reliable, we can trust what they say, but you don't trust it when they speak about Jesus in other areas, just in this one area. When we have to consider the reliability of a source, if they're mistaken in so many other places, how can you ask me to put my trust in one statement then, if the rest of what they've said you would necessarily disagree with?
Now, here is another hypocrisy at the highest level, see? So, if you say something wrong, how can you be reliable in something else? But yet, their prophet, as you probably know, pulled some satanic verses, yet they don't apply the same standards to their religion.
Can you help me work out the machinations of your thought there? Your thoughts?
Well, since you completely eliminate all the other sources, and those are not being spoken of within this context, my answer would be that there certainly was evidence for the Jews that they killed Jesus, just like I read about Muhammad and him going to heaven on a steed, and I don't see any historical evidence about that.
Just
and
to be
no
clear,
one writes about it with Muhammad. It isn't anywhere else.
Just to be clear, Mary, I think that's a bit of an equivocation, because Paul also said he went up to heaven, 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And no, I don't believe that you reject the historicity of that, right? So if Paul did it, Muhammad, peace be upon him, did it, that's irrelevant. We're focusing on the historical sources about Jesus, right? So the question I asked you still stands. If I can't trust the rabbis and what they say in the same work, mind you, from the 3rd century, then why should I trust everything else that they do say? You need to give me a reasonable argument in order for me to be convinced.
I agree. They need reasonable arguments just to say I don't believe in them. We'll just let them continue for a bit more.
To understand your position. I don't disagree with you because I dislike you, maybe. In fact, I think you're quite polite. May God reward you for being kind in your tone and cheerful. I appreciate that. So please help me. That's what I'm asking, because I am interested in seeing where you would like to take this.
Well, Ijaz, I guess The only thing I can say is that my faith does not permit me to believe in Islam and to believe what it says in the Quran. And what I also know is that there's scripture in the Bible where it actually states that those who are Christians are chosen by God. Perhaps the reality, guys, is that none of you are chosen by God to be Christian.
Could I ask you a question, Mary, if that's okay?
Sure.
I think so. Mary, you started off by saying that you were going to refer to the Mishnah,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to ask you that when was this oral tradition written down? When do we have our copies of these manuscripts of the Mishnah? When do they come to us?
It was all oral tradition. I believe it did not. They decided to write it when the Jews were expelled out of Jerusalem, out of Israel, and when they were dispersed all over the place to different locations. So I believe that is when the oral tradition actually became written. I'm not an expert. I don't have any YouTube channel on anything. I'm just an old woman.
I respect you, and I thank you for answering that. So the question then follows is, when writings that we do have that come from the Mishnah, when are they from? So if you look at the manuscripts that we have...
Oh my gosh, when they began to write them down, they wrote down everything that, I don't know.
He wants to imply that they keep, in the previous two videos, they keep referring to documents which are allegedly written in 10th century. Now, if I say I make a handwritten after, say, Genesis, does it mean that Genesis happened in 2019 or 20? I mean, come on. It's just has nothing to do. Just because I've made a copy, it doesn't mean that the actual facts happened at the time of the writings.
I think it began in something like, was it the Book of the Law, I think was 500 years before Christ. And then it continued after that. That's when the Sanhedrin, the one that I'm referring to. I'm not that up to date on all of that kind of stuff. I would admit that that's not an area of big interest for me.
So the reason for asking the question is, and I think Brother Ijaz can correct me, is that when we're looking as a non-Christian looking at this, so I'm now looking at extra biblical evidence that's being presented. One of the things I have
And they're looking at extra biblical evidence that they picked, remember.
to do is look at when these writings that we have come to us from. And as far as I can see, and I've sort of I've just done a very quick look to see, and really where I went to was the University of Cambridge Digital Library, and you can see the earliest copies of the Mishnah there. Maybe we can post a link, and they're dated from 470 Christian era, so that's the 5th century after Christ. So I think one of the things I have is actually this is extremely late after the event that we have the earliest manuscripts from. And maybe Brother Ijaz knows a little bit more about the manuscript dating. But then, if you look at that, then the Gospels themselves would be earlier than this, and even there is issues within the Gospels as well of how they present the events. But again, the events you're presenting are in contradiction to the events that you find even in the actual New Testament.
No, this is one of their favorite topic where they keep saying that the Gospels are contradicting themselves. So their ignorance has no limit. They've never read them. They only read 2 verses, which might seem contradiction, but you have to understand that John is an eyewitness, when the rest just collected from the eyewitness, which is a different thing.
So, for example, one of the things you said was that the Jews came to take Jesus from the garden, and it wasn't the Romans, but you see the disciples having weapons to try and fight off a group of people. And as far as I'm aware, these were
Notice they like to lie again. This is why I don't like deception. That the apostles have weapons. The facts are that only Peter apparently had one, and he is the only one who used one.
I know Hamza's presenting a different picture, but these, as far as I'm aware, these were Romans that came to get him.
A cohort of 600 soldiers.
Sorry?
A cohort of 600 soldiers.
See, I don't know where they're taking that from, because they give no reference.
Soldiers.
It depends on which gospel you read, to be honest.
Absolutely. So what we're finding is a sort of an inconsistency. So what I see is that the documents themselves are late. They're 5th century. The narrative isn't coherent with the New Testament.
Yeah, 500 it's late. 600 when Muhammad came to tell us that the crucifixion didn't happen because Allah just decided to change Isa. That's not late.
Narrative. And the question that you raised quite interesting was, why would the Jews write about this if it didn't happen? Well, I can give a very straightforward answer to that. And actually, it's from Ezekiel. The prophet that's killed is a false prophet.
As far as I remember, wasn't Muhammad killed by poison or something? Second of all, it's very stupid to say this. Like I said, they're literally very ignorant. Isaiah have been cut into, Zechariah killed in the temple, Jeremiah and so on. But remember, they're not there for the truth. You have to know that when you decide to go live or engage them in any conversation. They're not there for the truth. They're there to serve their father, the devil.
And this would be enough of a motivation to, in the eyes of those people who reject Jesus, because Muslims, we don't reject Jesus, peace be upon him, we believe him to be the Messiah sent to the Jews.
Notice another stupid thing they do. I'm sorry, I didn't want, when I've started the channel, to call people stupid, but I just can't help it sometimes. They call Jesus the Messiah. They don't know what Messiah is. They don't know what Messiah was supposed to do. And arguing the crucifixion, they also dismiss the Old Testament, who prophesy about the crucifixion, of course, and therefore making Muhammad again a fraud, because he swore on the Torah, as we know, that it's from the true God.
In the eyes of the people who reject him, this would be a sufficient motivation to record somebody being killed. So for me, on 3 different points that it falls down. So the narrative isn't coherent. The motivation would be quite clear why to write this, and the manuscripts, as far as I'm aware, are quite late, for 5th century or later. So for those 3 reasons, I think the historicity isn't clarified or sufficient for me to accept it. But maybe Brother Ijaz knows more about the datings than I do.
I have one more angle, sorry. Going back to the Mishnah. Because the first thing we have to understand is that Jesus was a common name. So it could be referring to a different Jesus who was stoned and crucified. And I'm just reading, there was a Jesus Han-Nazio, or Jesus Ben Pandera, who existed before the historical Jesus we're referring to. So the Mishnah could be referring to that particular crucifixion. Because here's your problem with this, Mary. If it's historical, then Jesus would have had to be stoned. If he wasn't stoned, what we're talking about is either not historical or it's referring to somebody else. And I don't think it supports the crucifixion as Christians believe it is, historically, looking at the evidence.
Okay, well, to each his own. I'd like to sign off and hear hear you interview.
Yes, as you can see, they keep quoting very late sources. So we're gonna watch a very early sources, maybe eyewitness. I'm saying maybe because I'm just trying to make fun of them. Of the crucifixion, and why not Pilate itself? Maybe would that do it? Let's see. So we read in the report that it's a first letter which Pilate sent to the Emperor Claudius. By believing these things were so, having scourged him, delivered him into their hand, and they crucified him, and he was buried. They set cords upon him. Now remember that Romans had no interest in setting guards on Jesus' tomb. They did. That's why it's saying they did. He had no intention of crucifying Jesus, as you know. He took a bowl of water, he washed his hand, and he said, "The blood of this innocent person be upon you." And the Jews replied, "Upon us and our children." So, as you can see, we have Pilate himself, and then how about his wife? How would you like that? I'm gonna read, it's a very long letter sent to one of our friends. So I'm just gonna read the bit where has the crucifixion. So at this time, one of my maidservants, a Jewish by birth, came to my room, pale, desperate, with frightening eyes, and she cried, "Doomsday has arrived. God tells us by these miracles." Then the curtain which hides the Holy of Holies in the temple was torn and been torn from the top to bottom in 2 parts. Woe on the Holy Abode. Rumors went that many grave opened, and many people saw a righteous man who long before them has passed away, came to life again. Prophets and priests from the time of Zachariah, who was killed in the temple. As you can see, we have prophets killed before that. The guy is stupid. Down to Jeremiah, who predicted Zion will fall, arose from the graves. So we can even see that the events took place at the crucifixion, and why not more one part where, well, she wants to ask the soldier who was at the cross. But O Flavia, on the 3rd day he showed himself in the town victorious and surrounded by majesty and radiance. He had risen again, he fulfilled his prophecy and victoriously overcame death. So I think a witness, eyewitness should be reliable enough. So these people are not there for the truth. They don't look sources, they don't do anything. They just sit lying on the back, waiting for us to bring arguments, and then politely, they were polite, I won't say, I'll give them that. They have been polite but stupid. Just say, well, I don't believe in that, or I don't know, look, because the manuscript looks older. Imagine that manuscripts were copied and copied and copied and copied because they would have been used and written on the paper. The paper would fall apart in 10 years. Maybe a lot of you went to school, for example, and you had a manual who someone used it years before you. It had torn apart and stuff like that. So just because they printed the same manual again, it doesn't mean that the manual doesn't reflect previous year of of school. So as you can see, I advise all Christians who engage with them, take more knowledge, search, and make them, expose them for what they are, liars and foolish. For the rest of you, all I can say, Jesus is Lord, He is our righteousness. We read in Corinthians, and you probably have seen how the passages I read ties with this so-called debate. So thanks for watching, and Jesus is Lord. Peace be to all our brothers, and may Lord bless you all.